Alright, YouTube. It's another video. Got a couple of comments on my Mouse Utopia video, and it was kind of cool to see. I guess it's popped up in the algorithm somewhere, which is kind of nice. I know these are low quality in terms of they're not Mr. Beast level production or anything, but it is nice to just at least get to talk to some people about things, even if it's in these couple of sentences worth of comments. At least you're interacting with the world to some degree. This one's not a fully fleshed out topic, but it's more so about the how little our economy has to do with anything of what I would describe as substance. I'm a firm believer that about 10 companies that are more focused in the IRL, in the real world, and about 10 internet companies or internet websites are dictating probably close to 80 to 90% of economic activity. And those main ones are, on the internet side, it's pretty obvious. It's Google, Amazon, Meta, aka Facebook/Instagram. They're owned by the Meta. I think everybody knows that by now. Netflix, even companies, Reddit, TikTok, and the whatever Chinese investment group or whatever that owns TikTok. And then maybe I would include a couple of gaming companies like Valve and stuff like that. And then finally, you could maybe include like Microsoft, just because of how long they've been around, and Apple. These 10 or so companies, websites, have so much of the world's data, and the big data era is such a disaster. It has ruined novelty. It has ruined fun. It has, people complain about, in the gaming community, a lot of people complain about how the optimization of everything, and I actually have a video, I believe, that's about the optimization of everything. But in this particular video, the video gamers, they complain about, how, a patch is released, and, because of all the beta test patch realms and stuff like that, like certain builds in video games are already like optimized, and there's no novelty, there's no exploration. There's a bigger and bigger amount of video game essayists. I'll listen to a couple of them here and there, and they'll talk about how, games aren't fun anymore. They feel like a chore. They feel like they're homework. They feel like they're, optimization min-maxing. And, you know, supposedly people don't like this anymore, or they're bored of it. They're sick and tired of it. Yet it's still what everybody does. So, the question I ask is do people want to live in a world where they have all the optimization but nobody else does? Well, that just makes you kind of a greedy fuck. But that's just video games. But I do think it is interesting how so much of the parallels to the actual economy we live in today are seen on a smaller scale in the video game community. Things like being fee fucked. Whenever you buy something, there's like 8 additional fees now to it, especially if you use any online shopping. That's the same thing, in the video game age as, microtransactions to unlock the full game and stuff like that. But anyway, the economy that we live in as a whole, those 10 or so website, internet-based, I guess Microsoft isn't internet-based, but it is kind of now, because I'd be willing to bet you Microsoft, almost all of the revenue they generate is probably due to algorithmic-based information they've gathered via all these algorithms that was transmitted via web space. But yeah, those 10, and then of course when it comes to like real life locations, it's a handful of maybe insurance companies, and like State Farm, I believe, is the largest insurer of auto. Of course, some banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, and then a handful of brick and mortar stores that are still relevant: Target, Walmart, um, you know, maybe Kroger, the grocery store, which is, I think, there's that Albertsons Kroger merger or whatever, takeover. I know there was a big stock issue with that a few years ago. And then, of course, maybe a few other companies like Starbucks and, large scale retail, like restaurant retail like that. McDonald's, and of course, everyone's talking about McDonald's these days. But, the thing is like, this is kind of the end result of, I know the phrase late stage capitalism is kind of cringe now because almost everyone fucking says it, but this is what you see when there's nothing new anymore, you know? We've been stuck in this algorithmic based era since the late 2000s, I would argue. Even, even the early and mid 2000s, there was some level of a unique. I mean, it was starting to become the problem we see today. Some dude bros. It's starting to see the problem that the problem that we see today has started as far back as, I would argue, the early 2000s, maybe in general. That was also right around when the internet really started taking off, the late 90s, early 2000s. But even the 2000s up until about 07, 08 felt like there was a distinct culture to it. And now, I mean, again, am I the only one who thinks like we've been other than of course COVID, which was a whole maybe it was all COVID was doubling down on the problem. It feels like to me we've been stuck in 2007, 2008 till today and for the foreseeable future. And I think that's really what the big issue is the lack of anything new. I mean, the number one, music, the number one tour in America is Taylor Swift. She's been like the number one pop star since, again, the late 2000s. I mean, that's over 15 years ago now. She should be considered like old and kind of like in that duller period of doing like voice acting or something like that for until she has like a revival tour. It's kind of like how Madonna was super relevant throughout the 80s, and then by the 90s she kind of started to scale back in terms of how popular she was, and then she kind of had a little bit of a revival in the 2000s, like an echo boom or whatever. We're at the point now where like nothing's changing anymore. The way I describe it as, in all the ways you want to see society change, we are slowing down to a halt. And in all the ways you want to see society speed up and improve, or I'm sorry, I said that wrong. In all the ways you want to see society change, we are slowing down to a halt. In all the ways that you want to see society slow down and enjoy the moment, it's passing us by. That's what I observe. And again, I think we've reached this optimization peak, and we need something to break through as a not just economically, but socially and just in terms of human behavior in the world. We need something to break through to change the ball game up to actually instill optimism and or even just socializing. I really don't see much of an economic future, in the United States. I hate to say it, but if the United States falls, the rest of the world will fall probably too. So I don't know what exactly to do anymore. I've been more and more lost in terms of my personal future and direction. I have hobbies to some degree. I'm not really ever really a bored person. I've had moments where maybe that particular evening I'm kind of frustratingly bored or something, and I'll have to do something pretty remedial or kind of like elementary to just have something to occupy my mind. But for the most part, I'm always trying to learn new things and do new stuff. I just don't really see other people joining in. I just actually had a couple of meetup groups earlier this week. It's Thursday. And on Tuesday, I had a meetup group. And then last week, I had a meetup group. And it's just like how small these groups are. It's like, first of all, one, I'll admit, I kind of wish there were more women in these groups. There never really is. It's always a bunch of dudes. So it's like, you don't really meet any potential dates or anything, which that's not my intention with these meetup groups, but it's something that you maybe would like to see as a side effect. Um, but you really just don't even see a lot of people at all. So I'm a firm believer that, until people start socializing and going out and hanging out and meeting new, it's like you're going to continue to see this optimization of everything that's just going to, and it's like you're not really going to see any sort of economic future that's substantive. My vocabulary fucking sucks. Substantial, even, I guess you could use that word there. So I don't know, what do other people think? I mean, how much of our economy, how much of your day-to-day life, how much of it does it revolve around a handful of tech companies and a handful of like investment bank companies? Do you think you spend too much time on the internet? Is there anything else to do? I don't know. This was a little bit of a rambling video. It has a little bit less of a specific topic, so forgive me. But yeah, I really just don't see much of anything to really be optimistic about economically. I really don't. I guess I can briefly talk about inflation and how I really, a large chunk of inflation is happening, and you know, I mean, this is, I think, a product of events that have been happening since even as far back as the Bush administration, but it really ramped up through Obama, Trump, and now Biden. And nobody seems to want to actually do, there isn't, nobody is willing to actually finally say it's time we need to lower our prices of things so that again, it's all about the optimization. It's like, landlords, for example, they'd rather have all these empty tenants, empty buildings, empty apartment units because they don't want somebody to get a better deal and um, and then they lose money, but so they're literally willing to sit on this and even, like, in theory, lose even more money. But in terms of apartment units, I believe there's a lawsuit going out on a data company that has a database of all of basically they work with multiple landlords and units, which pull all their information together, and so therefore they actually it's one data company that's manipulating the prices of all of these tenants. So basically, there is a sort of a monopoly where the data of one particular, all of these apartment units are contributing their data to one company who is then able to, tell them what to charge. And that to me is borderline monopolistic and should be questioned. So that's why I think apartment units have only gone up in the big data era, because they know exactly what to do. They have all of the information. They can optimize everything. I really don't know what the future is. So to the few people, anybody who listens to these videos, again, I got a couple of comments recently, which was kind of encouraging. I hope everything's going well for you guys. I hope you have some optimism. I hope you have some hobbies, some groups of friends. But I feel your struggle. Sorry for, again, sorry that this video isn't particularly topic focused, but I have a lot on my mind right now due to work and the little social life I have. And so this was kind of a rant. Anyway, just my thoughts and I'm out.